gods and the angels and all that stuff is what I saw. I thought I was dying and going out, but I did take a quick look at Cindy and a quick look at Rick because I had my eyes open, and they were both there watching, looking very calm. And I go, oh, that's really good news. My body looks fine.
So I didn't know whether it was my birth I was re-experiencing, my death which was yet to come, because I know that time crumbles. The linearity of time is totally meaningless in these states. You are at the Godhead, the point where all time folds in on itself.
More and more layers of my humanity start peeling off. Finally, the last, almost the last layer, and I can't even describe what it is, but you have, at some reaches way in there, there is like the last layer of that which defines you as a human being, and it goes click. You are no longer a human being. In fact, you're no longer anything you can identify.
There was no concept of time. It was so disorienting. I was so terrified. I have never in my entire life been so terrified to be blasted out of my body, to leave my body behind, to be going at warp speed backwards through my own DNA, out the other end, into the universe.
And so I went right into this white light. As soon as I went into it, I lost any sense of being different, any sense of what I was doing, past, any sense of future. It was absolutely blissful and euphoric, and I just felt like it wasn't I. I was everything. I was the light. There was no sense of separation, no shadows, no differences, no past, no future. It was all present and white yellow light. Then I felt myself falling out of this light, and as I fell out of it, I could feel the light was like a glow, like the sun with flames coming out and lapping out, and I could already start to feel this tremendous separation.
I reached across, and it was suddenly I'm in the universe, in this huge void, with these beings on the other side, and I put out my hands, and this incredible rainbow of pink light went between me and these entities. And I was trying to make it be like a white light, but it was this incredible pink light, this energy of love this capacity of love that we as human beings have, that I was trying to just send to them.
This meteor-like trip through the infinite space of the interior consciousness is up pops the picture puzzle pattern door. And I'm now whizzing through this sucker like if it was nothing. I'm flying through it. But now I know what the picture puzzle pattern door is. The picture puzzle pattern door is the farthest reaches of your humanity. This is the doorway into what defines you as a human being. When you go past that, you stop being human to a degree, and the further you get past this point, the further away you go from being a human being. But right here, this picture puzzle pattern door is everything. It's everything. It's what defines you as a human being. This picture puzzle pattern door is you.
This is like the actual core of where all of reality is emanating from. This is where meaning comes from. Symbols were pouring out. They were intertwined. Every symbol and letter and in every language was pouring out of this point.
And I looked around at my environment, and I was trying to absorb everything, to understand, but there were all of these machines or structures or things that I had never seen before, that I had no idea what they were. I was like a caveman in a computer lab. I didn't have any idea, but I knew in my intellectual awareness that this was a very advanced civilization or life forms or whatever they were so far advanced from what we know here on Earth.
There's one state in it, I call it the hobby horses, and they're interlocking, reticulating, vibrating hobby horses, and I use that's what they seem like to me. They interlock and they form a visual pattern that seems infinite in scape. And then you're on the inside, outside, inside, every side. And so it's less possible to use, words sort of start to escape you.
The texture of the space was very much like an animated Mexican tile. It seemed to be hyper vivid in color, in a Technicolor sense, but also very clay-like and earth, like with an earthen, pointing towards earth, but not really being of earth.
And there was no I. There was just a sense of a witness being suspended in this incredible vaulted space, like a cathedral made out of stained glass of all imaginable colors. Unbelievable brilliance and saturation of color. Just this amazing pattern in this dome, this gigantic dome. It felt like the size of of a small planet. And there were these winged beings. I don't remember exactly what they looked, but were like angels, something like angels, that were majestically kind of flying through the space. But there was something about the quality of how they were flying that was unique. I'd never seen anything like it. It was like, I don't know, the sense of another realm that was there. My sense was at some point there was this implicit sense, this is the divine realm. This is the divine realm. And it was not like a thought, but it was like this implicit kind of grokking recognition.
It was all very, very impersonal until I got to the space where I realized that I was in the area where souls await rebirth. And I was there, and I had been there so many times before. I recognized it, and this incredible transcendent peace came over me. I have never in my life ever felt such peace. Everything was stripped away. Every hope, every fear, every attachment to the material world was completely stripped out of me. I was free to just be the essence of a soul.
After the medicine wore off, there is that familiar sensation of kind of coming back into the body. And I do remember that. That was part of almost all of those experiences of kind of coalescing back into sensory awareness and a sense of having a body and of that becoming a little more substantial. And then say, oh yeah, here I am. And I live in a body and I'm okay.
So Laura removes the eye shades. And I ask, not really with my eyes open quite yet, I ask, how long was I gone? Because I needed to know. And Rick chimes in like 15 minutes. For a moment, I'm shocked. I'm like, mind, has to try to catch up because now the whole cognitive dissonance of the experience has to catch up. I was gone for 15 minutes. 1,000 years of experience in 15 minutes. Well, to say the least, it was profound. It was profound.
I mean, it's amazing. I mean, it's amazing what a human being can experience in a hospital bed. I mean, they can experience almost the whole universe. Life, death, everything in between.
This is not some recreational thing, and I don't believe anybody should enter this lightly. It is life transformative. It will perhaps shake you enough to realize, you know, that you need to be awake to the fact that you don't know, and that is the beginning of starting to know.
What we see here is such a tiny part of what is real. I get really frustrated because, of course, there's no way to prove that where I went was deep space, that I encountered, you know, other entities, other life forms that exist in this universe. At some point, maybe our civilization will become advanced enough and we will throw off these anchors of impossible thought, that these things are impossible, that it's not, you know, that everything that exists where we can see it.
I wrapped up the studies in '95 and really just had to take a break for a couple of years. I was aware of a growing sense of discomfort with what I was doing because I just couldn't explain it. And it seemed to me if I couldn't model and explain what was going on that I was doing and just, you know, bringing people to the edge of these kinds of experiences, it seemed like I ought to. That it was a little irresponsible to be sort of pushing people off the cliff like that without really knowing exactly what it was and accepting and understanding and feeling comfortable with that model. And, you know, I think what began dawning on me after a while once I stopped the study was that I was really dealing with a spiritual phenomenon.
What do these experiences say about the nature of reality, the nature of our minds, or the function of our brain that we can so quickly shift into these alternate realities? Let's take a step back and consider how these experiences inform us about ourselves, our consciousness, and the symbiosis of the two.
It started seeming to me that what was happening with DMT, particularly with respect to some of these reports of entering parallel or alternate or freestanding parallel sorts of realms of existence, is that indeed was what their consciousness was doing. The chemistry of their brain, which is the organ of consciousness, was being changed by DMT in such a way that they could then receive information that we weren't able to receive normally.
Yes, there's the experiences from DMT and ayahuasca, and they have their function. But if we'll also look at what it enables us to see,
it just rips that filtering mechanism away for a few minutes. And for a few minutes, you're immersed in sort of this raw data sphere of input, of sensory input, of memories, of associations. I mean, it seems like the brain builds reality out of these things, what you're experiencing, what you have experienced, and how you associate and synthesize these things together to tell yourself a story, essentially, about what's going on, where you are in space and time.
It's the brain that helps us to process all this information and to create for us a rendition of what our world is all about. But we're trapped within that brain. However, in spiritual experiences where people feel that they get beyond the self, in certain types of psychedelic experiences where you have incredible sensory and other types of phenomena, people really feel like they are able to kind of get outside of their brain. We have to take a very big look at what is going on within them when they have the experience and try to understand how it happens physiologically and try to make sense of it from the subjective perspective as well as from the objective perspective. I don't think you can just say, let's just explain it away on the basis of science.
What I was doing early on when I was hearing these reports were interpreting them, calling them psychological or brain chemistry aberrations or whatever, that there was a part of the brain that was being dinged that was responsible for the alien appearance phenomenon.
This is not a new phenomenon. Entities in altered states, have been recognized for an extremely long time in many cultures over the millennia. Helpers, spirit assistants, angels, all of these different entities have been fairly common throughout man's experience of altered states and through much of man's mythology.
But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that people are in some way interacting with some sort of an intelligence or sentient being or something that exists at some level that's not in this three-dimensional physical plane.
I'm looking at it from a sense of, okay, is the drug healing you? Is it helping you? Or is it giving you the tools? What are you bringing back? What you bring back, I think, has to be something more than there are these entities out there. The best psychedelic explorers are people who realize that even the truths they see on a trip are not truths, but new models, new what-ifs, alternative frames.
Unless there is a map and a clear methodology, then one will just have a variety of different experiences. All these various experiences that have been reported from NDEs, near-death experiences, alien abductions, alien encounters, sexual ecstasy, I believe all of these experiences, in fact, are fractals. If we understand the concept of fractal geometry, no matter how small it is, it contains everything that is in the larger picture. And thus, that validates profoundly all these various experiences.
Discount the phenomenon as hallucinatory or imaginary. I think it's maybe more useful to look at a mechanism of action. You know, if it is real, then perhaps how does it work?
Look, there's extraordinarily regular phenomena that come up with these things that are clearly linked in many ways to these larger human issues around mysticism or religious experience or encounters with other entities. And here we have it. And if you can't go in there and really go in there and account for this material inside your neuroscientific framework, you're leaving a huge gap. You got to account for this stuff the way you got to account for dreams, the way you got to account for all sorts of psychoactive responses.
Using DMT as an explanatory model, as kind of the mediator between our consciousness and the consciousness of a non-corporeal sort of reality, you know, it's handy.
With DMT, there are no words. I would try to wrap mathematical vocabulary around the experience afterwards. I specialized in the metaphor of vibration and how vibrations in fluids created form in fluid, and that would be the key to the relationship between the spiritual realm and the ordinary realm. This was the window that was opened by DMT.
Using psychedelic drugs or other types of pharmacological substances can help to induce a state where people feel that they touch a deeper sense of reality, where they understand reality on a more fundamental level, and they gain a great deal of insight and knowledge into the ways in which the world works and how they are, as a human being, supposed to relate to that world.
DMT is somehow, it seems to me in my experience, more of a breakthrough than LSD, mushrooms, peyote, and so on. It's instructive. It's more supportive of future evolution and the creation of the future. And it is, in itself, more of a mystery. How could this little stuff produce something that has intelligence? You know, that is actually a doorway to another reality.
So what is the nature of reality, and what is the nature of how we as human beings experience it? Can we understand it better? Are we capable of understanding reality on some very fundamental levels? And what do we need to do in order to prepare for that?
You know, there are parallel universes, it seems, at least that's a theory in modern physics. There is dark matter, which is a huge amount of the matter of the universe, maybe 95% or more. As radical an idea, it's just a logical extension in some ways of, instead of using a machine to see more than we normally can see, we're using the brain.
There are fields which are undiscovered so far, which have nothing to do with anything that is discovered so far. The gravitational field, you know, was unknown before the year 1604. the electromagnetic fields, unknown before the year 1830 or something. All of these, what we call the fundamental fields of mathematical physics, are new discoveries. Dark energy is also even newer discovery, and beyond that are maybe more discoveries yet coming beyond our cosmos itself, in higher dimensions, as they say.
I still don't have very much use for the concept of God, but I do believe that there are higher levels, transcendent levels of reality, and I'm actually now starting to really believe that the brain is not the source of consciousness, is not really who we are, but is more like a radio tuner for something way bigger.
Are these experiences spiritual experiences, or otherwise are they created by physiological processes, or is the brain itself responding to something that's going on? And the fact that somebody may actually find a way of turning on their brain to spiritual experiences, again, I mean, I'm not sure that that necessarily diminishes the reality or the realness of what those experiences are about. If the pharmacology or the psychopharmacology of psychedelic experiences turned out to be essentially the same as religious or spiritual experiences, it would help us to understand where these experiences are occurring within the human brain.
I'm actually quite convinced that we're probing the biological basis of moral and ethical behavior. I think these primary religious experiences really are at the bedrock of the world's religions.
The research and knowledge and speculation about the pineal body and DMT is in fact the hand of God that is interacting with our natural evolution to stimulate and accelerate the process of redemption of individual and of collective global enlightenment.
Because of my ayahuasca experiences, I consider myself a spiritual person. I know things now that I could never have known otherwise.
This experience is so familiar for a lot of different people, and is so easily acquired, and so much information comes with so little effort that it is a kind of a miracle. It's a miraculous way for us to transcend ordinary reality and obtain maybe an intimation of what's necessary for survival.
Ranging from new forms of medical treatment to a better understanding of the universe to life-changing spiritual revelations, these natural tools offer us the ability to seek greater knowledge. Tools that could positively affect life on our planet. Let's answer Dr. Strassman's question. If so, so what?
Because of the collapse of consciousness, spiritual and scientific knowledge split apart. Both these modes of knowing have to come together. In other words, science and technology, from a traditional religious perspective, is not an extra. It is part of the process by which humanity is going to evolve into its next stage.
How do we find the right form for psychedelics in the future? I mean, assuming that psychedelics are part of the human future, right? For that, at the moment, they're still, generally repressed and suppressed and legal. If that were to change, how would we begin to construct a kind of system that would allow for a kind of rational and mature exploration of psychedelics?
I think that the name of the game is to show science the pertinence of this somewhat outlandish realm. And it's not just crazy stuff. It shouldn't be considered as, let's say, not even worthy of interest or illegitimate. I actually think because it's declared off bounds, it just makes it interesting to start with. But one doesn't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater, and I think it's really important to stay faithful to science.
What does it mean? Why is there a part of the brain that seems to be, for lack of a better word, a God detector? What's the evolutionary advantage to having some part of the brain that seems to, trigger and mediate experiences of the transcendent.
The Kabbalah is revealing to us that the pineal body is actually the very edge of the higher dimension that is penetrating into our lower dimension, and it is located precisely in the middle of the brain.
I can remember reading about Descartes, thinking that it was actually the interface between the spiritual dimension and the dimension of matter. And I remember studying that as a foolish idea from our history. And now it seems actually like a very interesting idea.
What we are looking for out